All right. Well, without further ado, it is my immense pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, my colleague and friend, Amy Renfranz. Amy began in environmental education at the Blue Ridge Parkway in 2008. In 2009, she was awarded the National Park Service at the Blue Ridge Parkway's Ranger of the Year Award for her work in creating new programming for youth and adults. She's worked at Grandfather Mountain Stewardship Foundation, Lisa McRae College, the Yellowstone Association Institute, and New Hanover County Soil and Water Conservation District. For nearly 10 years, she wrote an award-winning weekly newspaper column called Dear Naturalist. In 2022, she began pursuing a full-time career in native plant landscaping. She currently serves on the board of Keep New Hanover County Beautiful and the Environmental Educators of North Carolina. And I'm going to turn it on over to Amy.
Sweet. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Marissa, and thank you to Cape Fear River Watch. It's an honor to be here surrounded by such experts in the field. The conversations this morning, it's intimidating. Y'all are intimidating. This is such an expert group, and I love being around you, my plant people, environmentalists. Thank you for everything that you do, and it's an honor to be here in front of you this morning talking about natural communities. This morning, I will make an attempt at making connections between mountain natural communities in the Southern Appalachians and those here on the coast. We'll also be talking about how and why we should be thinking about these natural communities in our own human landscapes too. So, I would like to preface all of this by saying that this is my own poetic interpretation. By no means is this a scientific abstract on why mountain communities are like coastal communities. This is a poetic, personal interpretation based on my own experiences and feelings, my own connections to these places. I lived in the Boone area, worked at Grandfather Mountain and the Blue Ridge Parkway on and off for almost 20 years, and have been here on the coast for 2 years. So for a lot of this, it's me walking into my new coastal environment and feeling like, wow, this reminds me of that place in the mountains. And it's starting to feel like home. And so I'm hoping, I know we had a lot of good conversations going, and maybe we can start them up again, that we can start off just talking amongst ourselves for 2 or 3 minutes about a place that you feel connected to. So think in your mind right now of a natural place, a natural community that you feel connected to. It may be a place that's very familiar, or a place maybe you only went to once, but that inspired you. And the sounds that you heard there, maybe the smell, and what you saw when you looked around. And let's turn and talk to each other about that place. Describe it to a friend. All right. I'm going to do it. Marissa, do you want to do it? Or yeah, I want to do it. What's your place?
I got it.
What's it like there? Tell me more about it.
There's not as much sand is limited. So I like the big canopy trees and hemlocks.
Right, it's glacial.
Well, the trees here,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't have that great variety of trees. It's all pine, but not all.
Right.
You know, as I said, I grew up in New England, and I grew up.
Wow. And you live there or visited?
Well, I live here.
Oh, right, but live there. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived there for
Oh, wow.
family. My family goes back to 50 years.
Wow. That's really neat. It's home. Yeah. I love that. Marissa, what's yours?
I mean, I love the beach. It's my favorite place, but I'm thinking of like the sea oats and then like the salt marsh, which is right near there. That's what I'm thinking. And the smell of like sulfur, you know,
Yeah.
rotten eggs
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
in the salt marsh.
The smell really sticks with you. It really, and I think that's really when you go into a new place and it reminds you of another place, it's the smell more than anything. Cool. All right. I wonder, yeah, it's cool. I want to hear everyone's, I was just talking to Hunter over there. He helped build the trails at Grandfather Mountain. I mean, this is just wild. Yeah, it's really cool. Is it okay if I'm just kind of perched here? I feel so tall. I'm not going to flip it. All right, everyone, about 1 more minute. I think my natural community is actually in here. It's the Fraser Fir Forest on Grandfather. Just the fog and the smell. It just, I hope it never leaves, ever. Yes, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that it survived. Yeah, it was there. All right, everyone. If you can hear me, clap twice. So I love seeing all the smiles on your faces as you're describing your ecosystems. Does anyone want to share out loud your home place, your natural community?
Merchant's Mill Pond.
Tell me more.
Well, no, I mean, I only went there once. It was an experience like I'd never had in my whole life. Because each little area you kayaked in, it was something different. And there were no power boats, no jet skis, no nothing. I've never been, I've only been once, and I wish I could go again. And I'm so glad because my husband's now in a wheelchair, and if we had not gone when we went, he would have not been able to experience that. It's near Elizabeth City. I highly recommend it.
Northeast corner of the state. So a one-time experience that was lasting. Do you remember how it smelled?
Yes, and we were lucky that day because we did not have mosquitoes. We had brought everything because they acted like mosquitoes just traveled with you, but
Yeah.
we didn't have mosquitoes. It was just magical.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see like some head shaking, like, yeah, I feel like each of us holds these places with us our whole lives. So thank you for sharing that. And what you're describing is a natural community. I'm sure a lot of us, when we were thinking about this place, we were thinking of a natural community. Oh, by the way, this is my poetic interpretation. So, what a lovely poem by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. We'll actually be talking about Joyce Kilmer's Memorial Forest a little later in our talk too. So, a natural community. The official definition of it is defined as a distinct and reoccurring assemblage of populations of plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi associated with each other in their physical environment. And a lot of them will have, they will all have different ingredients that if you mix them together, you get this reoccurring assemblage of organisms. So the ingredients include soils, the hydrology of the place, the vegetation, the climate, the elevation, and many other factors. So you get the same ingredients, you get a similar natural community. And as our example, and before I go on, these are defined by the North Carolina Natural Heritage Program, who have done inventories in almost every county in North Carolina. So I actually have up here, if you want to peruse, this is their natural area inventory of New Hanover County. So, and they discuss the natural communities here. You can see how dirty it is because I've really taken it out a lot of places. But to think more about how these work. So this is the American Horticultural Society's heat zone map. The colors, oh, it's not very clear, but the colors denote days above 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see on the coast here we have some green with yellow in the middle. The green means that there are up to 90 days in our area above 86 degrees Fahrenheit where the temperatures reach that. The yellow actually, oh no, it's good. It's like very dramatic because the yellow, that area is actually even hotter. That center part of the state, they have up to 120 days where the temperature reaches 86 degrees. But from there, as you go into the mountains in the western part of the state, it's hard to see in this image, but there are some spots of pink, and you know them. I just learned that Hunter worked at Grandfather Mountain. There are days in pink of areas in North Carolina that never reach 86 degrees Fahrenheit along the Appalachian Mountains. And you can see there's a string of blue and pink on up into northeast. And corresponding to that, you get specific natural communities too. So remember that little dots of blue and pink, now they're in green, showing the range of the red spruce tree going on up into Maine and Canada. And the red spruce tree, gorgeous community type. If you've been in the mountains, you've experienced this at some point. And the very first natural community we're really going to dive into can be included in red spruce, but it's even more rare. So I'm going to jump into making these connections between mountains and coastal communities. And my very first category are evergreen forests. So I'll start with the mountain community, and then we'll talk about the coastal community that it reminds me of. In the mountain community, even more rare than the red spruce forest is the Fraser fir forest. The ingredients are listed below. To have a Fraser fir forest of wild Christmas trees in North Carolina, you need an elevation and the climate that goes along with it around 6,000 feet. Soils are rocky and shallow with a thick organic layer. So many years of undisturbed organic layer deposition. The hydrology is going to be pretty wet with a lot of fog and rain and snow. All right, can we dim the lights?
The lights are on. Turn off the lights, please.
Yeah, that would help. That's a good point. Yes. Yeah, it's hard to see. This is the range of the Fraser fir tree in the world. Many of them probably have many of us probably have a Fraser fir in our home right now, maybe, if you have a Christmas tree. But in the wild, this is the range of that tree. The tiny little bits of green that you see there. And this is just showing where the tree exists. Where it is the dominant tree making up the forest and the community type is even more rare than this. Only the very highest peaks in the mountains can you walk into a true Fraser fir natural community. And y'all, it is magical. It's magical. It's an extremely rare and an endangered community type. And Hunter, I know, Hunter helped build the trails on Grandfather Mountain. It's one that will never leave you. So here in the Black Mountains near Mount Mitchell, you enter Fraser Fir Forest. We'll talk about other places where they exist. It's hard to capture what they look like. The forest can be very dense, but in this picture you see along the range of the mountains, it's this evergreen forest. There's what a Fraser fir tree looks like up close and in the wild. Not necessarily the like squat little cones, but still maintains that shape. It's very well adapted for the life in the place where it lives. In the fog. In the southern Appalachian Mountains, this is of Grandfather. As air rises up and over the ridge, the moisture condenses to form this nice fog layer in cloudland forest along the peaks of our highest mountains. And then in the wintertime, that fog is oftentimes in the form of ice. So rime ice deposition occurs when wind carries super cooled moisture up over the ridge and the water freezes on the first thing it touches. So here on this weather station, we could really see it happening. The wind is actually coming from this way and the ice forms on the windward side of objects. And you can get icicles this long out the side of trees, of poles. And what happens is that the forest on the windward side can be sculpted by the ice. And cause this frozen flagging effect, which if you're thinking about coastal communities, we have some tree flagging here too. Connections. In the Fraser Fir Forest, you'll find an assemblage of plants. So if you walk into the Fraser Fir Forest, chances are you'll also see the pink shell azalea, which is a native azalea, of course. It's a deciduous plant, so it loses all of its leaves. And before it gets its leaves back in the early spring, it blooms. So you walk into the Fraser Fir Forest and you just see orbs of pink everywhere you look. It's really unbelievable. Along the ground, painted trilliums. A rare northern flying squirrel, which actually began my career with the Park Service. I have the reputation, the whole winter we were studying these creatures, the biologists never found a northern flying squirrel. And the second the days that I missed, you would always find them in their boxes. You'll also, in the Fraser Fir Forest, find animals you don't typically associate with the South, like the raven. Who I miss, don't you miss them? We have the world's smallest tarantula living in the moss of the Fraser Fir Forest. It's the spruce fir moss spider. It's about the size of the tip of a pin. So like no fear there, but there they are. And then creature amphibians, like the Weller's salamander, black with gold speckles. The amphibian life, of course, in the mountains is just incredible. Salamander hotspot. And you have to do this. Go into the mountains at night and just sit there. And along the forest floor, you'll see salamanders come out and crawl around, go up to the base of trees. It's really incredible. And not enough people take advantage of laying around at night and watching salamanders come out. I don't know why, Marissa. I really don't know why. So places where you can experience Fraser fir trees or Fraser fir forests, and you really need to with our changing climate. These forests might be outcompeted by the lower elevation forests below them in the red spruce trees. So get out there, climb Mount Mitchell. Go to Mount Rogers in Southwest Virginia, or Roan Mountain. It is on the Tennessee, North Carolina border. The Appalachian Trail goes through, and along its highest peaks, you'll find Fraser fir forests. And at the highest peak of Grandfather Mountain as well, Fraser fir. So what do you think then, knowing a little bit about that community, is the coastal equivalent, in my little mind at least?
Maritime forest.
Longleaf pine forest.
Oh, I heard, was that Roger Shue say maritime forest? Yeah. Nah. Why do you think maritime forest?
Well, I lived on Oak Island for many, many years, so.
So you know the shaping, maybe?
Maritime
Smell.
Which doesn't exist there anymore.
It is one that is threatened in a lot of ways, like the Fraser fir. And here we have maritime evergreen forest. And to me, walking into one of these for the first time, I thought, this reminds me of being in those high elevation forests. Of course, it's very different. Whereas Fraser fir is the highest of the high, the elevation of a maritime evergreen forest is the lowest of the low. Here we have very near sea level. The soils are young and poorly developed, sandy, excessively drained soils. And instead of it being very wet, you have dry conditions with salt spray also that the trees are having to compete with. But you get, this is actually at Fort Fisher, you get that flagging effect. Of course, it's not ice shearing the branches, it's wind and the salt spray here in the coastal community. And like the Fraser fir trees can being a plant on the edge, the oaks and the evergreen forest there too are also plants on the edge. Plants that are dependent on the protection provided by other natural communities between them and the ocean. So you can see, this is on Corolla, the Audubon's Pine Island Preserve. And you can see the evergreen forest starts here, and it's protected by another natural community, a shrub community, and then by the dune grass community. So if there's much change in the dunes, or if the shrubs die off, the evergreen forest will be affected by that too. This is a connected communities. And of course, dominated by the southern live oak, which gets that incredible look to it in this community. You'll also find there the Yopon holly and Carolina cherry laurel. It's this, you're walking around Fort Fisher, walking around the aquarium, you really get into the maritime evergreen forest. Down further south, beginning at Bald Head, you'll find the sable palms and painted buntings singing. I actually just saw them when I was down in Florida. So they've left here, they left our maritime forest here and have moved south for the winter. And places to experience this community type, Audubon's Pine Island Sanctuary in Corolla. Thank you, past Amy, for writing that down. And in nearby barrier islands, you'll find pockets of maritime evergreen. These little protected areas. There's one coming to mind on Hutaff Island where there's just enough shrub layer for these stunted, gnarled live oaks to grow. It's really a neat place. So, moving on to category number 2. How the heck does anything live here? And the mountain community looks a little something like this. So the top of a mountain, exposed rock, horizontal rock face, completely exposed to the elements. And the plants growing there have nothing to protect them from the wind and the full sun and the fog and the ice. So we have true survivors here. How the heck does anything live here? Get this bonsai effect. If it were a little more hospitable, you might have a Fraser fir forest. And you can see they're bonsai'd there. A 100-year-old tree might be as tall as my hips. I took this picture when I worked at Grandfather Mountain. I was in charge of the weather station there. You know, the honor, the pressure, it's intense. This didn't even make the news that day, but I took a screenshot of what the weather station recording. The winds were in the 70-mile-per-hour range that day. The temperature was 5 below, and the wind chill was 40 below. And you think, oh my gosh, a massive die-off of the community here. We're in the south. There's nothing, no way anything's going to survive up at the top of the mountain. No, it's fine. It is our very own alpine zone. These high elevation rocky summits are the natural community type. And the ingredients, the elevation, you need about 4,500 feet elevation for this to occur. The horizontal or vertical rock face, the soil in quotation mark, are bare rock areas with no soil. There will be collecting in some of the cracks some organic matter and very early stages of soil formation. And the hydrology is interesting because when you get rain, the rain might fill in puddles among the rock, but beyond that it's just washing right off. So until those puddles evaporate, you have very, very wet areas. And sometimes frogs and salamanders just go into town in these little ponds. There on the rocky summits, you'll find sand myrtle, just bonsai'd along the rocks. It's gorgeous, kalmia. What's very interesting about it is that you can also find sand myrtle here on the coast. It almost totally skips the Piedmont, in the mountains and a few high elevation rocky summits. And then you get out of your car at Boiling Lake Springs Nature Park. It's like growing around the parking lot. Yes, Boiling Springs Lake. It's growing around the parking lot there at their nature park. So an interesting distribution to this plant, and just incredibly beautiful there among the bare rocks. You'll find deer grass there, which grows commonly in the Arctic Circle. There it is here in the south. And you'll find endemics that only live in these communities, like the Liatris, Heller's blazing star, Blue Ridge goldenrod, stunted, beautiful goldenrod, and the Roan Mountain bluet as well. Told you. And because there's bare rock face and edges and cliffs, ahead you'll see the occasional peregrine falcon. So places to experience this rocky summit. It's unusual to have a flat rocky spot here. So Grandfather Mountain to me has the best examples of them, but also on that Roan Mountain. If you haven't been to Roan Mountain, go to Roan Mountain. You'll find the high elevation rocky summit that the Appalachian Trail just walks you right through. So what is the coastal equivalent of how the heck does anything live here? You got it. This is your natural community, Marissa. What's this? What looks like a nice sunny day to us. How is anything growing in that? In the full sun, with the salt spray, with that soil? The ingredients of this salt-sprayed and shifting dune grass community, coastal areas immediately behind the beach, coarse and shifting sands, and excessively drained with high amounts of salt spray. But there you'll find sea oats. You see them swaying in the wind. American beach grass, sea beach amaranth and beach morning glory. They're growing right out of the sand, dealing with everything that they have to deal with, creating habitat for animals like the black skimmer, my very favorite bird. So how the heck does anything live here in the coastal area? Of course, you can find the dune grass natural community on any of the barrier islands, especially in some places where there's a lot of development, where it's been reestablished because we know it helps with erosion issues. But right here in our own backyard, Lee Hutaff Island and Masonboro Island too. And the third category, and our last one, I'm not going to say I have a favorite. No, I don't have a favorite. But this is the climax forest. And to me, these climax forests, they're the apex of succession. So all succession has occurred, and all the niches of the forest are filled. So the only place where you can really witness competition happening amongst the plants is where an old tree is died and the plants are vying for that spot in the sunlight. But beyond that, in these climax forests, it feels to me when you're in them like there's a little bit of harmony and peace and quiet, except for all the birds, and at night all the salamanders. And this particular picture he took in the springtime at Joyce Kilmer Memorial Forest in the Slick Rock Wilderness. And it is one of the very rare places, there's about 3,000 acres there, that wasn't logged. So it is virgin forest of...
Where is that?
Oh, it is in the southwest corner of the state. So near Bryson City, that area. And worth the trip, worth it to see a virgin forest. These trees that weren't logged, they're tulip poplars. So a type of magnolia, reach over 100 feet tall and are more than 20 feet in circumference at their base. So my wingspan is about 6 feet, you know, more than 3 of me around, and just taking up space in these rich cove forests. So I notice in this picture that there's not really a shrub layer. And there are the tall trees and then this rich herbaceous layer. The soil here is close to neutral in rich cove forests. So oftentimes you won't find like the rhododendrons and other heaths that really fill in other mountain coves. And a cove, you can kind of see it, is a spot between two mountain ridges, like a little valley. It's protected with typically a creek running through. So as you walk along a mountain, you can walk into different coves. You can walk from an acid cove that's filled with shrubs and rhododendron, and then walk into the next one that is a rich cove, so more neutral soils. In the springtime, the trilliums, just incredible. So the ingredients here, they're sheltered. They're primarily on the lower slopes too. You're not going to find these up at high elevations in the mountains. The soils are rich, neutral, and deep. And the hydrology is typically pretty moist. Messick. The big trees there in Joyce Kilmer are tulip poplar trees, again a type of magnolia, which to me has this like very underrated, beautiful bloom in the spring, little teacup yellows and orange. You'll find the Fraser sedge. And one of my favorites, this is actually an annual. It takes over the forest floor in the spring like a carpet. It's called fringed phacelia. It's gorgeous. Again, notice that no shrub layer there. So these herbaceous plants can really take hold. And ramps. You can make good potato soup with ramps. Of course, sustainably harvested. Only a few leaves here and there. Oh, if you sit around at night for long enough. I actually took this in a Rich Cove forest. I took this picture. I didn't even move. Wow. And the Yanalasi salamander came out to hunt at the bottom of a tree. And in these protected sites, these in moist, rich, organic soil, if you're there at the right time of year, you can find the blue ghost fireflies. Y'all, these fireflies, they don't blink. They're around the forest floor. It's like fairies just kind of haunting the forest. Really incredible. So please go experience a Rich Cove forest. They're frequent. You can find them as you're driving along the road and the mountain, but these are two of my favorites. And the Joyce Kilmer, of course, it's a 2-mile trail through virgin forest, unlike any other place in North Carolina. And then really a spot that's very personal to me, and I've spent a lot of time in the Wilson Creek Wild and Scenic River area. There are plenty of trails through this area, but it's not very developed. So you can take a dirt road and drive through natural community and camp the night in a Rich Cove forest. So what's the coastal equivalent? Tell me more. What reminds you of, why the connection, you think?
Well, they're some of the oldest trees in the world are in North Carolina swamps, swamps, because they're so impassable that they haven't really been logged.
Right. Yep.
And they're really unique to the coastal, the eastern coastal plain.
And there's almost no way that you could kayak into one and look up at those trees and not have the connection. If you've been to Joyce Kilmer, that this reminds me of that. These big old trees, a similar circumference, if not larger. Raise your hand if you've ever been in the Three Sisters Swamp, Black River. Luckily, if it weren't for Cape Fear River Watch, I would never have gone in or really known where to go. This is right in our backyard here. You've got to get there. We'll take you. I don't know, someone will take you. Of the Three Sisters Swamp along the Black River, an area of unlogged cypress swamp. And in the cypress gum blackwater swamp. So that's the natural community. And the one specifically in our backyard is the Black River cypress swamp with trees over 2,000 years old. The oldest trees east of the Rockies. Less than an hour drive from where we are right now. So the ingredients, featureless floodplains of blackwater rivers. The soils are hydric, and the hydrology is that they'll be seasonally to semi-permanently flooded. The water tends to be very acidic and is stained with the tannins from the surrounding trees. So it's actually clear usually if you look down, but it's black. Of course, the dominant tree in this community type are the bald cypress trees. swamp tupelo growing amongst them. If you look up and you're lucky enough, you might find a greenfly orchid. And of course, a sanctuary for birds and other life. We found this rookery of great blue herons, and just an incredible sight. I mean, I don't have to describe to you the smell that comes with this swamp, and add to the sound of the birds, seeing the swallowtail kite fly over, an incredible natural community that we have. So you'll find a blackwater swamp at the Black River, Three Sisters Cove. There are also some great examples of this that along the Waccamaw River, the Lumber River, Lumberton State Park, and our very own Northeast Cape Fear River too. So what does this mean for us? We have natural communities everywhere. Most of what I've talked about are their own parks or their own set-aside preserved areas. But of course, where we build our homes, our businesses, and our roads, they were and could be a natural community. I think it's something important for us to consider. Dr. Doug Tallamy out of the University of Delaware. I see some head shaking. I just want to share a few quotes from his research, and he has several publications out. He has started the homegrown national park movement. So this is recognizing our own backyards as the ability to be their own national parks. In his research, he found that 54% of the lower 48 states have been converted in some way for our own human uses. So their city, their suburb, their roads, airports, pavement, their lawn. Y'all, 40 million acres of lawn in the lower 48 states. 40 million acres. So 54%, and then I turn the page and he says, and 41% of the lower 48 states used for agriculture, which, I mean, we need to survive. But 54 and 41, did I do the math right? 95% of the lower 48 states used in a human capacity. Of course, there's space for wildlife and wild places between, but it's because of that this yard, that in a lot of ways, I think for us, we think of as a symbol of ourselves that we're putting out there for passersby to see. They can be like a social statement or a symbol of how well we like conform to societal standards. How green is our lawn? But knowing the numbers that we know now, I think we could be urged, if we're able to think about them in a different way, to think about them and their ability to continue on with the natural community that was there before a home or a business was built or a road. So I know when Marissa introduced me, I've worked as a naturalist for about 25 years, and 6 months ago, I decided I can't just keep talking about natural areas. I love this, but Grandfather Mountain's a bubble. It's 2,000 acres surrounded by everything else. I gotta get into the everything else. I can't just focus on the bubble. So 6 months ago, have taken the leap into native plant landscaping And I know I'm here with experts and I'm learning every day. I know Andy Wood is the speaker next month. I've had the opportunity to work with him and his wife, Sandy Wood, with their Habitats Landscaping Company, and working out at Pender Pines and taking classes and using what I've known about natural communities to apply to everything else. So with this experience, I just urge you to leave your space, maybe leave your business, go visit a natural area near you with this lens of like, what's my yard like? And then what's this space right down the road like? What birds are existing here that aren't in my yard for some reason? If I flip a log, is there a salamander there? Why not in my yard? Is there a box turtle? Why not in my yard? Could be. And take a look at the different layers too. This actually is at Pages Creek Nature Preserve right down the road from my house. When I bought my house a year ago, and it's grass lawn with privet, which is one of our worst invasive plants. So I walk down the street and I see the trees, see a thick shrub layer, and unlike Richco Forest, there's almost no herbaceous layer down below. The next step after making observations is to consider your own soil, that very important ingredient. Of course, you can have your soil tested by the Extension Service. I do actually have, and you can find it online, a soil survey of New Hanover County, so you can learn exactly what natural soil, what the native soil is like in your area. For me, I found that it is excessively drained and coarse sand for like 8 feet down below. So I'm thinking, oh, how the heck does anything live here? And I go back to Pages Creek right down below, and a lot of things live there. One thing we have to consider in our modern landscape, though, we were just talking about this, Kate, is that after years and years of development or construction, the soil can be drastically impacted by heavy metals, or in a lot of new development today, the whole top layer of soil is removed to make way for the new houses and neighborhoods, and just the B horizon is left with like a thin layer of whatever is thrown on top. So if you want to go native, you have to consider the soil's not necessarily native anymore. It's not what took hundreds of years to form. So a lot of amendments might need to be in place. You might have to spend some time or years adding organic material to your soil to start to create a hospitable environment for those native plants. And this is it in a very quick nutshell. We could talk all day about this, but after considering soils and considering what natural community is near you, go home and make a map. Make a map of what your yard looks like now. X some things out, like all the privet that was in my yard, and start to think about what trees were in that natural community, and can I find those in a nursery nearby? And what shrubs were there? That layering is important in natural communities. Think about food, cover, and water for wildlife. You build it and they will come. Remove invasives first. So it might take some research to figure out, didn't take me very long to learn that it was all privet in my yard, and now the privets escaped into other areas, but let's get rid of that privet first. Start small, maybe you start with one tree. That tree could one day support thousands of species. But plan for diversity. So plan to incorporate not just 6 different types of plants. Plan to shoot for 12. Select plants that flower and fruit at different times of the year if you're able to, and create layers and curves just like what you would find in the natural environment. Consult an expert, and I know we have some in the room. And above all, the right plant in the right place. So if you have a full sun environment, don't try and plant something that really requires shade. Really consider that and take the time. And it takes hundreds of years for these natural communities to form sometimes, and it might take you a while too if you have that space to work in. There are lots of good resources out there for you to consult with or to read. Audubon has a whole program, Plants for Birds, with a great website. One of my favorites actually is the North Carolina Extension Gardeners Plant Toolbox. What I love about this is you can do their search and you can say, I want to plant something along the foundation of my house in full sun. I want it to be a native plant. What is that? What is it? Full sun, native plant along the foundation of a house. It's actually Carolina cherry laurel does that really well. Yes, thank you. Maritime evergreen forest, natural community type. Coastal Landscapes Initiative is from NCC grant. I actually have some of their handouts here. They have templates for people to start to think about, maybe I can install this in my own yard. Of course, the Homegrown National Park with Doug Tallamy. Our very own New Hanover County Extension Office is even creating a new program called the Nature at Home program, where you can have your own yard certified as wildlife habitat, and they offer a lot of services that go along with that. So I would love to talk with you more about your own yards or answer any questions you might have now regarding natural communities between the mountains and the coast. Any questions?
I cried a little bit. I love that presentation so much. Thank you so much for coming. I have questions because I'm not a naturalist, and I just love all the naturalists around me. You guys just have so much knowledge. I always thought that the term trees at Fort Fisher was, hurricane forest, and you said it was salt spray. Are you saying it's generally, even without a hurricane, those things would be going like that? Is it the salt or the wind, or just like 50-50?
The constant wind and salt spray causes that. The wind's not blowing when we're looking at them, right? They've been sculpted in that way. So they're actually they've been defoliated on one side, the windward side, and the trunk is usually protecting the leeward side, allowing for growth out the other side. And you get that like frozen in time, gnarled look. That's a good question. If any other experts in the room want to share their insights on that? Oh. Okay, so a combination of both.
Yeah, and one more. You mentioned the squat trees in the rock, I forget what was the rocky tree.
Oh, you have the high elevation Rocky Summit, yeah.
Thank you. Why are they squatted?
The harsh environment that they grow in with the soils and the wind and the ice, they just can't grow out of that shape. If they grow up a little bit too tall, they might be hit by another blast of wind or ice. So they're growing in just protected enough area to get 4 feet tall, but not any taller than that. Interesting. Yeah, we took a core of one, and the tree rings were there, but almost not. There was like solid tree rings for 100 years.
Wow.
Really neat. Oh.
Okay, you mentioned a few places to go to see some of these plant communities. Do you know of a resource that talks about specific trails that are dedicated to the
Natural
communities?
communities.
Something you don't really find it with state parks?
There. One resource. I know of a good resource for mountain natural communities. There's been a book, I can't remember the professor's name, but the book is incredible. It's written by natural community and talks about where they are in the plants. I don't know of that source in the coastal communities. So as far as a book, maybe there's a need for one. for coastal communities, places to experience them. Are we going to write it?
I'm curious, I thought somewhere along the Blue Ridge Parkway, it was devastated by some kind of boring beetle. And I'm wondering, is there an upside to that? After that death occurs, is there something that comes along?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question was if along the parkway, wasn't there some sort of boring beetle that affected the trees? And there was. Actually, it affected the Fraser fir forest, the balsam woolly adelgid. So in some places the forest was decimated by that adelgid and replaced usually by red spruce trees with a few Fraser firs sticking in. At Grandfather Mountain, the Fraser fir trees, I think because they're such an island to themselves, that tiny community on top of Callaway Peak, that the balsam woolly adelgid didn't really get in there and have that effect. When a canopy is open due to the loss happening there, and that can be really good in the climax forest. When you have forests on the edge, like Fraser fir forest, the loss of one could be, and I think that the botanists would agree, it's just one more step to us losing that tiny mountain island forest at the top of the mountain. But that's my perspective. The Fraser fir trees are so few and far between.
I just want to mention one other thing. You talked about experts. For people who live in the coastal plain, Seacoast Plants of the Carolinas.
Yes.
By Paul Hosier. Mm-hmm. And Cape Fear River Watch over the years has had every kind of imaginable expert at the Saturday seminars. So
come out.
Look at the history of people who have talked at Cape Fear River. And also this thing about experts, you know, the more you learn, the less expert you become.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the things I would like to ask about is that you haven't talked about is mass extinction that's happening now. And you're involved with conservation and preservation and restoration. But we have a mass extinction of plants, birds, vertebrates, invertebrates,
right.
Fish. Talk about that.
Yeah.
I hate to be depressing.
No, remember when I said I turned the page and was shocked when Doug Tallamy says that 54% has been really messed with by humans, and 41%, oh, by the way, is also our agriculture. And then in his book, he says that because 95% of our natural lands have been converted, then we're at risk of losing 95% of our species. And I just think that that's one more thing to consider. What do we value? Do we value the green lawn over something that looks a little more American in my mind? I think, you know, in my opinion, I don't work for anyone really right now, so I can say my opinion without being too filtered, is that I think in our own landscape designs, we still have like a very we can have a very colonial mindset still, and we're bringing in plants from Europe and plants from Asia. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the meme, but there's a meme going around that's like a man dressed with, you know, with the powdered wig and the whole gown and get up, and the meme says, "We don't dress like this anymore. Why do our yards still look like his yard?" Like, and it's very true. I think that it's really time for us to evolve and to consider ourselves to be a part of something rather than, you know, we have Pages Creek Preserve and then the green lawn right up next to it. Why not invite it in a little bit more? Create more than just these little islands. I know that it's not direct. I feel like at this point in my own life, I'm grasping on to hope. I feel like I've got my nails dug in, and I want, even if I only create 10 places, help people create 10 places, that's what I want to do, and I'm hoping for a ripple effect, a few more oak trees. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I know a couple people came in a couple minutes late, but we have a raffle and door prize giveaway today. Did anybody not get a ticket that still needs one? Would like to have
Tell us about
to win a trivia.
what plant is it?
So this is coral honeysuckle. It's a wonderful native. I read that it can survive in full sun, but typically in the natural environment you'll find it in part shade. It's a nice survivor, and this is actually a few years old. It's got nice woody growth. It's ready to go outside in your yard, a business, along the road. Do some guerrilla planting of it.
Yeah.
It's a good survivor.
It's better alternative to honeysuckle.
Yes.
Honey's or whatever.
Yeah, better alternative to the very invasive
And aggressive.
yes, Chinese honeysuckle. So this beautiful red bloom, great hummingbird plant. All right.
Cool, okay, I think you can just read the last three. Just
All right.
one of our buckets there. Everybody has the first same four numbers, so I think Amy will just read the last three.
2, 7, 4. They left early.
274. They might have left early.
They're lost. 274. Yay! Take care of this baby.
Okay, well, Amy, you're going to be hanging out a little bit.
Yep, I'll be hanging out. Happy to answer questions.
Longer if anybody wants to ask questions or grab any of our resources, but thank you
Yeah,
guys
come look
all.
over.